Messi flying forward. Leo Messi!
United. Rafael Guerreiro with the cross. Ronaldo!
FC Barcelona defender Paulo Kubasi currently leading the votes for the 2026 Golden Boy Award. Recall Kubasi was voted as the best young player at the just concluded FIFA World Cup in USA, Mexico, and of course Canada. And football hasn't stopped this very summer, so to make sure you're actually up to speed with how every Premier League team is shaping up ahead of the new campaign. We've taken a look at their preparations for the new season, from new managers and new signings to pre-season form and emerging talents. Today we'll take a look at how the top 20 Premier League teams are faring ahead of the 2026-2027 campaign. On that note, I say welcome to Sports 360 right here on CEMTV Television. I'm that minute of voice you trust and that media you probably need. They call me Rex Patrick the Locker, that's homeboy that's never at home. I look around 247-365. I'm your host and guide. All right, now let's look at the Golden Boy Award, because FC Barcelona defender Paulo Kubasi is currently leading the votes for the 2026 Golden Boy Award. Of course, he's been a key part of the Barca side for the most part and emerged as the best young player at the just concluded FIFA World Cup in USA, Mexico, and of course Canada. And now Toto Sports has released the current standings while waiting for the final votes to take place later this year. Kubasi has already picked up his first individual award, having been named Best Young Player at the 2026 FIFA World Cup in USA, Mexico, and of course Canada. In second place is Kubasi's teammate Lamine Yamal, who cannot win this year's award again due to the regulations. Yan Diomande is in third place. Warren Zaïre-Emery is in fourth, and Ayub Buadi currently occupies the fifth spot. Of course, Buadi is on the radar of Manchester City and is linked with a move away from Lille Metropole this very summer. The winner of the Golden Boy Award will be announced in November 2026. So from there now, let's look at the Premier League and what's happening ahead of the new campaign 2026-2027. Of course, we've seen numerous teams getting the job done in pre-season, some struggling and some having mixed results. But then, throughout the summer, football never stopped. We saw the World Cup and now we're looking forward to the new campaign. Now, interestingly, we're here to bring you up to speed with what's happening, with how every Premier League team is shaping up ahead of the new season this weekend. So we'll take a look at preparations for the new campaign, from new managers to new signings to pre-season form and of course emerging talents. Yes, the lowdown on how the top 20 teams are looking. We start off with the Gunners talking about Arsenal. For Arsenal fans, they'll be like, oh, why Arsenal? Why start with Arsenal? Hey, I really want the best for Arsenal this very season, So Arsenal fans, let's take a look at these. A lot of Arsenal's transfer talk has surrounded Vinicius Junior and Bradley Barcola this very summer. But has Christos Zolis given Mikel Arteta a reason to think differently after joining the side this very summer? Of course, he was phenomenal in the Community Shield against Manchester City. 2 assists to his name. Absolutely top. You know, prior to his moving to Arsenal last term, he scored up to about 17 goals and recorded up to about 23 assists. So that's some good number. Yeah, good numbers, right? There was not a great deal of fanfare when the Greek winger moved for £34 million from Club Brugge. Yeah, early in the window. But Zolis has shown quite a lot of threat since arriving right there at Arsenal. In 6 preseason games, Zolis has recorded about 6 assists, assisted 6 times and recorded 1 goal, including making 2 in the Community Shield. And that was against the Citizens of Manchester, and that's it's something to build on. He's by no means flashy. You know, he completed none of his dribbles in the win in Cardiff, for example, but he's very effective, highly effective for the Gunners. That preseason form mirrored his form last season, getting 51 goals contribution in 52 games for Club Brugge, a set-piece threat as well. If he gets anything close to those numbers in the regular season, then the Gunners Arsenal have found themselves a £34 million bargain. In fact, they'll have to go back, all right, and still handsome monies to Club Brugge, you know, for letting go one of their most prized assets. Yeah, but very relatively cheap for what it's worth, £34 million. But then we wait to see when the season starts in earnest this very weekend. The Gunners are expected to go into the new campaign and retain the Premier League crown on the backdrop of a really good outing last time when they won the Premier League title and got to the final of the UEFA Champions League. But will they cut it this very season? Only time will tell. Let's look at Aston Villa next up. Okay, next up is Aston Villa. The doom and gloom mood of pre-season following the departures of Morgan Rogers and Yuri Telemore, was momentarily lifted with the performance of Aston Villa against Paris Saint-Germain in the UEFA Super Cup final. Of course, it was quite an easy-peasy affair for PSG. I tell you for what it's worth. Oh, well, easy-peasy, that was, let's say, in the second period. But Aston Villa got into the game before start. They were top, giving good accounts of themselves and all of that. But then PSG brought in a different approach going into the second period and ended up coming up tops. New signing João Gomes and 17-year-old Brian Manjo have impressed in pre-season and stood out once again against PSG despite the loss. However, Unai Emery was dealt another blow where reports emerged of injuries for both players as they approached the season opener against the Seagulls. Talking about Brighton and Hove Albion, they'll now join both Amadou Onana and new signing Yohan Manzambi on the sidelines. And it's unfortunate, it's been a summer of change at Villa Park and navigating key player exits is difficult enough. Injuries and the absence of any form of pre-season for Ezri Konsa and Oli Watkins due to their extended World Cup breaks now means both the lineup and performance itself could throw up a few surprises at the American Express Stadium. Being their opener, yeah, they play the Seagulls, Brighton and Hove Albion. What's it like going into the new campaign? We're talking about the current Europa League holders. Yeah, Aston Villa won the Europa League last season. They were really top, on the continent of Europe. Really, really solid. They gave a good account of themselves, but no 2 seasons are the same. Let's now talk about the Sheriffs AFC Bournemouth. After a free-scoring pre-season under new head coach Marco Rose, there are hopes that life after Andoni Iraola can be just as bright as Bournemouth, despite a first season in Europe to contend with. So, Marco Rose is expected to bring in, his A game and bring in his very best, get the best of these players going into the new season. The Sheriff's succession plan is as strong for players as it is for managers and Rose. We'll tinker with rather than overhaul Iraola's work and getting their transfer business done early enough. has helped the squad settle ahead of their most testing season. An injury to Eli Krupi, will stop him from carrying on his super form from last season for the foreseeable future. But there's already intrigue about the prospect of Alvaro Rodriguez, a summer arrival from Elche. There are concerns over a lack of depth in central defense, especially with 22-year-old Antonio Silva expected to slot straight in to replace Marcos Senesi. But the ex-Benfica man has got plenty of pedigree, making 20 appearances for Portugal already and 41 in the UEFA Champions League. That's a huge statement going into the new campaign. So that experience is expected to count, for the most part, this season. Let's now move to the GTech Community Stadium. Of course, we talk about Brentford. That's the home ground of Brentford, where the Bees are also gearing up for the new season. They got a lot in store and are looking forward to life this campaign. Goal difference alone prevented the Bees from qualifying for Europe in May. But that's been forgotten now. It's behind them. They've spent over £60 million this summer, breaking the transfer record to sign Mali international midfielder, that's Mamadou Sangare from Lens, while also adding proven Premier League players Callum Wilson and Jadon Anthony to bolster the attack. Keith Andrews' side blew Eintracht Frankfurt away with a 7-0 win at a GTech Community Stadium, and that was last Saturday, which set tongues wagging about what might be possible this term. Reaching Europe is sure to be the target internally, and this could well be the campaign they go on. They go one better than they did last term, and they're actually a team to watch. Talking about the Bees Brentford. Last time they were top, gave several top teams, run to the mornings. But then this season, guys like Thiago are expected to come pretty good and all of that. So he's been top, brilliant player every day of the year. He was absolutely phenomenal. Finished as one of the top scorers in the Premier League. Last time. But then, no two seasons are the same. Will we be seeing yet another player stepping up to the plate this campaign from this Brentford side? Well, only time will tell. From there, let's now move to the American Express Stadium, where the Seagulls, Brighton and Hove Albion are well prepped up for the new campaign. It was a blow to Brighton to lose Danny Welbeck in the summer, but few fans will be, begrudged with the move at this stage of his career after he gave a lot to the club. Likewise, Brighton will feel they got brilliant money in for Jan-Paul van Hecker and Carl Rushworth, the latter of which could be challenging James Trafford for the England jersey in the coming years. In terms of incomings, it's the usual case of trust the process with Brighton's recruitment team. The incredible hit rate has slowed a little in recent times, but the club have generally rebuilt pretty well year on year. Now, their aim would be nothing short of, have a good campaign. Nothing matters other than winning the Conference League, and that's where they are for the new season. Having watched Crystal Palace lift the trophy last season, anything other than victory in Istanbul in June would be a disaster. For the Seagulls, talking about Brighton and Hove Albion. They qualified for the Europa Conference League and have got no choice than to go into that competition on the right foot and ensure they make it count. Have they got enough in the tank to deliver? We'll get to find out when the season starts in earnest. Now, still in London, this time West London precisely. Let's look at Chelsea. West London as Chelsea, because they're in the conversation. Xabi Alonso appears to be replicating his successful, 3-4-3 formation, which delivered the Bundesliga title for Bayer Leverkusen at Chelsea after testing the system in pre-season. Of Of course, Alonso had fielded a 4-2-3-1 in their first 3 friendlies. But after switching to a back 3 against Rossoneri and that Association Calcio Milan, their best performance of the summer in a 3-0 win, it seems he could stick with it heading into the opening match against the Cottagers, fellow Londoners talking about Fulham on Monday Night Football. So the Blues are well pumped up, brought in Morgan Rogers' quality signing. Maxence Lacroix was at the heart of the back 3 in that final preseason game against Real Sociedad, while Morgan Rogers started on the right of a dangerous front line, including João Pedro and Cole Palmer. Marco Palestra struggled at left wing back, with Pedro Neto operating on the other side. It remains a work in progress for what it's worth. So Chelsea, I mean, a lot is not really expected from this Chelsea side in terms of challenging or going on to win the Premier League title. But then, it is still believed that, Chelsea are one of the dark horses or the outsiders when it comes to winning the Premier League title. They got all it takes to make it count. They got pull up surprises, just the way Antonio Conte did back in 2016-2017, where Chelsea finished the previous season 10th on the log. 2015-2016, when Leicester won the league, they brought in a different manager, the next season, 2016-2017. Antonio Conte, he went on to win the Premier League title. It's a similar story going into the 2026-2027 campaign. Yeah, they have a thing for 6. Then it was 16-17. Now 26-27. Quite intriguing. And they finished 10th, 2016-2017. Of course, we know the story. Chelsea had real struggle last term, and that was, finishing 10th in the Prem, and they failed to qualify or pick up any of the European sports, be it the UEFA Champions League, Europa League, or even the Europa Conference League, which they won some 2 seasons ago. Same summer, they were crowned world champions. What do I know? No 2 seasons are the same. Xabi Alonso pulled a shocker in Germany, leading Leverkusen against all odds. Got to the final of the Europa League. Yeah, lost to Atalanta Bergamo. No thanks to Ademola Lookman, who had them stunned in that final. He scored a hat-trick. But then, the Xabi Alonso-led Leverkusen side that season went unbeaten. In the Bundesliga, also went on to win the DFB Pokal. Can Alonso repeat such feat in the Premier League, this time with Chelsea? Again, only time will tell. Now let's look at newly promoted side, Coventry. So Coventry City are in the conversation, they're in the news. A friendly win over AS Monaco was an encouraging way to finish pre-season and a clean sheet for goalkeeper Carl Rushworth, who was signed on a permanent deal after his impressive loan spell last year. He will add confidence to the backline, which was the meanest in the second tier, that's the English Championship, as he gained promotion to the top flight. That belief could be tested with an extremely difficult opener at Arsenal. We see that on Friday night, but after 25 years away, expect Coventry and their fans to relish their Premier League return. They got all it takes to pull an upset against the Gunners, talking about Arsenal. They'll hope the creative Gustavo Hammer and powerhouse Taiwo Awoniyi can give Frank Lampard's side threat at the other end to cheer. All right? So, but the question is, I don't know, can they continue their front foot approach at the highest level? Can they really continue that front foot approach at the highest level? Talking about Coventry City, led by Frank James Lampard. We wait to see what happens. When the season starts in earnest. They play on Friday night. They got the Gunners to worry about. A side led by Mikel Arteta, Premier League champions, current holders of the title. Now let's look at Palace, the Eagles Crystal Palace. Now, the London side started pre-season with a new manager in Pierre Sage. Yeah, but the Frenchman's attempt to implement a new playing style have been hampered as a host of first team players were focused on the World Cup rather than an opening 5-1 win over Swindon Town. I don't know what it is for the side, right? So the reappearance of Matheus Franca, a forgotten Brazilian youngster, has been one of the rare positives as he scored a hat-trick against Swindon and has featured regularly. So the Eagles Crystal Palace are looking forward to what the campaign has got for them. A 3-0 loss to Bromley would not have offered much optimism for Sage, who then had to endure a stinging defeat by the same scoreline to former club RC Lens in a swift reunion at the Como Cup. Palace defeated FC Famalicão on penalties before scoring their first goals of the tournament, albeit in a consolation 3-0 victory over Saudi side Alula SC. The returning Ismail Assar should be a key player for Sage, and he was on target with Franca in a 2-1 win over the Cottagers, talking about Fulham. But a 3-0 loss to Freiburg has left the new Palace boss to admit that he needs to temper his desire to tinker. Yeah, he needs to temper his desire to tinker. So we wait to see what he's got in store going into the new season. Now, let's move to Hill Dickinson Stadium as we talk about the Toffees Everton, who are also looking forward to the new campaign. Now, the Toffees' summer business has been steady with the addition of highly rated Hayden Hackney plus Christian Nogard from Arsenal, offering extra bite and quality in midfield. But strength in depth remains an issue elsewhere in the potential requirements of Jake O'Brien or even James Garner to cover at right back for another season, unless the Toffees can add some more quality at right back. Yeah, they were linked with Daniel Munoz and expressed an interest in Jet Spence before his move to Inter Milan, but have yet to get a new face through the door. That has not been a problem on the right of that very attack, where Brennan Johnson has added some extra pace, which the counter-attack minded David Moyes will look to exploit at every opportunity going into the new season. Now, David Moyes, well experienced, he knows his onion inside out, but can Everton put their end of the season drop behind them to reach Europe this time around? Yeah, have they got enough in the tank to deliver, to challenge other teams for a place in Europe for the next season? Moyes might not always be flavor of the month at the Hill Dickinson Stadium, but you can never rule it out. You just can't rule it out with him this time around. You just can't. You can't rule them out. David Moyes, yeah, great guy, great manager. He's been there and done it time and time again. From Hill Dickinson Stadium in the city of Liverpool, let's now move back to London, this time with the Cottagers Fulham. Yeah, Craven Cottage precisely. Alvaro Arbeloa's arrival from Spanish giants Real Madrid has injected some Castilian culture into Craven Cottage. Rather than looking to the domestic market to fill the void left by Harry Wilson and Raul Jimenez, Arbeloa tapped in to La Fabrica, Real Madrid's renowned youth academy. Yeah, he did. He did. Knowing the quality of what the players have got. In a stunning double transfer, Fulham completed a €50 million deal for two of Real Madrid's brightest young players. We're talking about striker Gonzalo Garcia and attacking midfielder Cesar Palacios. And behind them, £30 million signing Shea Charles will provide a solid anchor in midfield. Fulham are evolving. Yeah, they're evolving their squad nicely. And it's commendable. Arbeloa has also looked, to put his Spanish stamp on the team's tactical identity in pre-season. They've adopted a high intensity, high pressing approach. This new style has excited Fulham fans. But with Chelsea, Liverpool and Manchester United among their early opponents, Los Blancos will need to settle into their new identity pronto if they must make it count. I'm talking about Palacios and, of course, Garcia. Let's talk about the Tigers now. This time, I'm talking about Hull City. Yeah? Look, they've gained promotion back to the top flight, and it's commendable. Hull, yeah, were shock playoff winners of, that was last season in the Championship. They find the odds and a transfer embargo to seal a return to the Premier League. Highly commendable. Once again, they have their doubters this summer, but predicting how they'll fare. Yeah, they'll fare this season. I mean, it's been a bit complicated. Yeah, it's a bit complicating trying to predict how they'll go about business, how they'll fare in the Premier League after getting promotion. By a flood of new arrivals, and with more expected in the final days of the window, we can't say for what it's worth if they'll have enough synergy to maintain the Premier League status. An injury to one of those new additions, goalkeeper Jack Butland, is a major blow, with the former England stopper likely out until Christmas due to arm surgery. But the Tigers, we hope they have secured some savvy buys. Yeah, a last Sunderland last season with Noble Mendy, Konstantinos Zoulakis, and 18-year-old OC centre-back Lucas Harrington. Ones to watch. Goals, though, could be an issue. They hit the net just once in their final 3 friendlies before the start of the new season, and that's a bit worrisome. Yeah, really worrisome. But then, the preseason is different from the season itself. Oh, the target is maintain Premier League status. And that's exactly what they got in mind at this material time. So from there, let's move on to another team. The Tractor Boys. That's Ipswich Town. Yeah, so the Tractor Boys are back in it. Yeah, back to the top flight. They returned to the top flight looking a very different entity to the one which was relegated in May 2025. Victories in the last 3 pre-season fixtures have featured encouraging displays from new additions and a hint at how they'll potentially set up with a back 3 under new boss Gary O'Neill. Experienced Premier League players rather than upcoming domestic and championship talents have been targeted, while Jason Maida's arrival from Celtic, arrives after scoring fades north of the border. So I don't know, he's got some brilliant start, I tell you, his goal scoring and all of that. So the Brazilian striker Emerson is still lastly an unknown quantity despite 2 goals in his last 2 preseason starts. There are potentially more additions to come before Sunderland visits Portman Road, on Saturday, as the Tractor Boys, Ipswich Town, have got them to worry about. Let's move on to Leeds United. The Whites, we saw them last time. Brilliant, really brilliant going into the new season. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has been on fire in pre-season with 3 goals to his name and 2 assists. He's set for an even better season than he had last time. But is he really ready for the stiff test that comes with a new campaign? He's well experienced. He's a Premier League player, been there time and time again. The lead striker had a pretty good campaign last time out with 14 Premier League goals, but it was even more impressive because he didn't have a pre-season as he completed his Elland Road move on the eve of last term. So, having had a relatively full pre-season and with his injury woes behind him, plus the likes of Harry Wilson now in the team to support Leeds' attacking threat, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin going to lead Daniel Farke's wish for the Whites to be more competitive this term, 2026-2027? Will Leeds United be more competitive than they were last term? We wait to find out. Only time will tell. Calvin Lewin, he's proven. Former Everton man, he's been there. He's such a fox in the box. You know, when he's fit enough, he brings in 110%. That's performance. In terms of performances, yeah, in terms of performance, 110%. All he needs is to stay fit. All he needs to do is stay fit. All right, and I guess he'll have a good season. So from Leeds, let's look at Liverpool, where Andoni Iraola has probably been under more scrutiny during pre-season at Liverpool than in 3 years in charge of the Cherries, talking about Bournemouth. All right. So from recruitment to the balance of the squad, from the style of play to the ability to maintain that performance or style of play for 90 minutes. I mean, eyes are actually on Andoni Iraola going into the new season. Yeah. So, I don't know, Alexander Isak, Florian Wirtz will surely improve, but it still feels like a rebuild. The Liverpool fans are ready to embrace his rock and roll football. But can Iraola, coaching in Europe for the first time in his career, deliver the results that will sustain that support? Yeah, is he ready for a stiff test? Is he ready for the big test? Well, only time will tell. Let's now talk about the citizens of Manchester. I'm talking about City. Yeah, we move on to Etihad Stadium, where the post-Pep Guardiola era has already begun. We saw that in the Community Shield. Much of Man City's tactical approach under Enzo Maresca will mirror that of predecessor Pep Guardiola. They share similar philosophies, but a key change can be seen in how the Italian wants to use his wide players as more traditional wingers. Throwback to a bygone era of Raheem Sterling and Leroy Sané, and it's something close. Maresca has got two of the best wide ball carriers in the league in Antoine Semenyo and Jeremy Doku. The intention is to use them as such, but an issue has a reason. We've seen that already. An issue? There's an issue. Does Maresca have a midfield capable of servicing this system? It was clear against Arsenal in the Community Shield that they do not. Yeah, they don't at this material time. Semenyo landed 5 assists in pre-season, but caught an isolated figure in that, dismal 3-0 defeat. With Bernardo Silva gone and Rodri's exit close, City's midfield reshuffle needs some serious work in order to get the team functioning and flowing as Maresca wants this new season. Are they ready? Are they ready for the new campaign? Can Maresca pull up surprises by challenging for the Premier League title keenly? Again, time will tell. So, from Etihad Stadium, we move to the Theatre of Dreams. I'm talking about Old Trafford, the home ground of Manchester United, where the Red Devils ended their Premier League preparations with a 4-2 defeat to Rossoneri, talking about Association Calcio Milan. But the good news for Michael Carrick and United is that 2 players in particular have stood out in pre-season. Yeah, 2 players have stood out for what it's worth. We've seen that already. Having perhaps looked a bit tired towards the end of last term, Carrick will be pouring, he'll be pouring to see Brian Buemo and Amad Diallo back to their electric selves. Yeah, they are expected to bring in their A game going into the new campaign. It was quite clear last season that United would largely defend on the edge of their own box. What we've seen in pre-season has been a deviation or perhaps progression. United are pushing higher and working harder to press and counter-press the opposition. The game was a perfect illustration of why United need to invest seriously in left back, not just because Luke Shaw will need to be rotated with the increased number of games that comes with European competition, but also due to the way Manchester United clearly wants to play going forward. And now let's wrap up with Magpies Newcastle United, because they're also, in the conversation going into the new season. Eddie Howe called for this summer to be different for Newcastle. It certainly has been, though not quite how they intended. The now ex-head coach had hoped for early incomings and strong investment in a side which suffered after a messy transfer window 12 months ago. But instead, the loss of Anthony Gordon and Sandro Tonali left the Magpies playing catch-up again, while Bruno Guimaraes' departure was the final straw for Eddie Howe to walk. Yeah, the final straw. Matthias Jessel, another graduate of the Red Bull franchise, replaced him with an expectation of attacking football. But his more pressing concern will be that, 4 of his 5 new signings, costing almost £140 million combined, are aged 20 or under. The loss of experience on the pitch and in the dugout suggests another season of transition on Tyneside. Yeah, but with the club still maintaining aims of a Premier League push within 4 years, Jessel and his players will have to come good sooner rather than later. Yeah, they have to come really good. And that's exactly what's expected of the Magpies Newcastle United. And for Crystal Palace, Oliver Glasner arrives at Nottingham, not Palace, but, Forest this time. Because Oliver Glasner, former Crystal Palace boss, he arrives Nottingham Forest, a tie that has won trophy. We've seen that in recent seasons. Palace also won trophy, so he won a trophy with Crystal Palace. He won trophies, not a trophy, trophies with Crystal Palace. And that's, I guess, why he was brought in. I guess that was why he was brought in right there at the City Ground. Forest have switched to his favoured system and are quietly reshaping the squad to his needs. Ousmane Diomande appears to be the standout signing, and for now, at least, the key men remain. Forest fans would settle for Premier League progress after their European adventure, but do not rule out fireworks from owner Evangelos Marinakis late in the window. So they're expected to really make it count. Teams such as Sunderland would also come good. They spent over £180 million revamping their squad for their return to the Premier League last summer, and there was, there was method in the madness. The Black Card stepped up they stepped up admirably and qualified for the Europa League. So qualifying for Europe for the first time in over half a century means a whole lot for the side, and they're looking to build on that going into the new season. Interestingly, we can't go any further. This is where we get to put a pin right here on Sports 360. Been a great time with you out there, and believe me, you are the real MVP. I remain Danny, the voice you trust, standard mayor you probably need. I'm Rex Patrick the Locker, and it's a wrap.